Welcome to On Texas Football. I'm Bobby Burton, your host, joined by CJ Vogel. CJ, welcome in. We're going to talk a little football recruiting news and notes right now. It's a Saturday afternoon, evening update as people are watching the state championship games. CJ, myself, yourself included, a lot of good games going on tonight, but there's a lot of action on the 40 acres as well. And so we need to get to that. 5 players made it in for official visits this weekend to Texas. Those 5 are Xavier Filsaime, a safety out of McKinney, Texas; Tyanthony Smith, a linebacker out of Jasper, Texas; Alex Foster, a defensive end, defensive tackle prospect out of Greenville, Mississippi; and then 2 portal transfer potentials. Andrew Mukuba, a nickelback out of Clemson, a 2-year starter at nickel for the Tigers, originally from Austin LBJ; and then Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of Houston. Okay, other news and notes that I want to say before we even get to those 5. Tyler Barron was a possibility to visit Texas. He's an edge prospect from Tennessee. Earlier today, he committed to Ole Miss. Texas no longer involved there. There was some question whether Texas really wanted him in the first place. Also, going outbound, Malik Murphy was expected to visit Baylor this weekend. He put that visit off. He'll visit the Bears as well as Duke and Oregon State in the month of January. All right, let's go now, CJ, and let's start with the 5 guys on the Longhorn campus and what you've heard today and how things are going. I'll just start with a broad question. How are things going right now for the Longhorns on this official visit weekend?
Yeah, very strongly. It's been a good weekend on the 40 acres, as you would expect, coming down to the wire in terms of National Signing Day and getting things, really prepared portal-wise in terms of, moving forward and trying to get guys into the boat now for the 2024 season. When you look at it, a lot of guys are on campus right now that Texas is in great position for. You mentioned the 5 official visitors. It's hard to look at all 5 of them and say Texas still has a lot of work remaining in each recruitment. And I think that's very encouraging, obviously. With that said, I do think some movement could come in the next couple of days, maybe in the next 24 hours, potentially, when you look at some of these guys and where they're at in their recruitment. Again, very encouraging right now. I think Saturday was buzzing. The recruiting team, having driven by, it looked like they were knocking it out of the park. So very impressive stuff. And again, next 24 hours, I think we'll see some movement there.
Yeah, that's good stuff there. By movement, you mean actual commitments, right? I mean, that's what you're talking about. Yeah, I think so. That's what I've heard as well. Who it will be is the question that everybody wants to know. But here's my piece on it. I mean, Texas might go 5 for 5 out of this weekend. On the last signing day, or last weekend before signing day, not including all the guys they had in Austin this weekend. For example, I'll give you an example. Brandon Baker, there was a rumor out there that he was going to be at Nebraska this weekend because a quarterback named Dylan Raiola had switched his commitment from Georgia to Nebraska. Well, that didn't work out. Brandon Baker's in Austin. So a lot of committed players on campus too. But this 5 for 5 idea, let's start maybe with Xavier Filsaime. He has been a guy that Texas has been on. He's been committed to Florida and really actually vociferously so. I mean, he's almost adamant about it at times, but it looks like the turmoil at Florida literally just too much for just about any kid to deal with right now. And that's part of it. The other part of it, Texas is recruiting him so hard right now, Blake Gideon in the group. Where does Texas stand on that? Do you think if you had to put in a crystal ball or RPM or whatever you call it, do you think Texas and Filsaime is where he ends up?
It's only a matter of time before a flip comes, in my opinion. The text I got this afternoon was very, very reaffirming in the sense that Texas, again, made that jump over Florida, and eventually we'll see that flip coming down the road. We'll have to, tighten down on what day specifically, but right now I think a flip is coming. I would certainly put in an RPM or crystal ball or, something along the lines of that for Filsaime.
That's the question, CJ, right? Is, ultimately these guys are going to make their own decision, their own time frames. You're just hearing behind the scenes. That's the way it's working. You're not saying it's done, it's good, it's announced or anything like that. All right, that's perhaps the top safety left on the board. I think it's interesting. Wardell Mack, some of those guys are also trying to recruit Filsaime as well to Texas. There's a group there that he's familiar with that are also trying to push him that way. All right, let's talk about the Texas A&M commitment, Tyanthony Smith. A lot of people are saying that A&M is already waving the white flag on Smith. He's been committed to the Aggies since the summer, but Texas has been hanging around the rim. What are you hearing? What's the latest on Tyanthony Smith?
Yeah, this again was a guy that was expected to be a part of that Texas A&M class. Obviously, some turmoil and change and turnover in College Station makes things a little bit more difficult to stay true to that pledge when you kind of consider the best option for yourself. Tyanthony Smith, when you look at it, last week, he was a guy that really started to arise in terms of where Texas was pushing for him specifically. And the word that I got was, if he makes it to campus, watch out. And I think I mentioned that earlier on a previous show as well. But again, he's here on campus. And Texas is really giving him a lot to think about. At the moment, that white flag for A&M is probably getting a little bit bigger in cloth. I think it is, kind of becoming one of those things where you're starting to see the writing on the wall before it takes place. And similar to Filsaime, we might be looking at two flips here at the very least.
Okay, so let me ask you about that, CJ. How good is Tyanthony Smith? I mean, I give people a sense for what kind of player he is, because a lot of people have asked that.
Yeah, no, he's a guy that was very fun to watch in 7-on-7. And at the linebacker position, that's kind of a rarity with how spread out it is, with how, the space for linebackers isn't, something that always works into favors for young guys that aren't great in coverage. That's a kid that was playing safety for his 7-on-7 team. So it shows that he is good to go in terms of covering in space. The pass game is something that he was very successful in coverage, and I am very much a big fan of how committed he gets to stopping the run in film. That's something that, again, moving into the SEC, you're going to need guys like this. And so I'm a big fan of Tyanthony Smith. I think the athleticism is there, the length is there, and obviously the versatility to drop back and to, stop the run is something that will continue to develop. But where it's at right now is very encouraging.
One of the ones that we knew was coming in midweek or so, but we didn't want to say it because we didn't. The news hadn't broken. Alex Foster out of Greenville, Mississippi. This is a Bo Davis special, in my opinion. He's committed to Baylor. He's been on campus before. He came for the Texas Tech game a little bit a couple weeks back. But let me ask you this. I mean, where is Texas in that recruitment? I've got some insight on it as well, and I'll let you start with it.
Yeah, Foster shot me a text late Friday night that he made it in to the 40 acres. I'm not sure how late he did get in, but he was on campus. And, I mean, he's still in – as we're recording this, he's still enjoying his official visit. Like you said, this is a Bo Davis special. I feel like dipping into that prime SEC territory, especially this late in the cycle, and coming out, with a guy that, again, very raw, but guy with all the physical tools and really the perfect build to develop in a few years to be a contributing guy. I'd love to hear what you have on terms of where things sit with Texas. The word I've got with Foster is kind of quiet, so let's hear it.
Absolutely. What I'm hearing is that Foster has been debating whether or not to sign in the early signing period or the latter signing period. I'm being told that if he signs in the early signing period and Texas pushes, that's where Texas would want him at to sign early. If it goes to the second signing period, then maybe some other guys open up, like D'Alen Evans out of Longview Pine Tree we've talked about, like Dominic McKinley out of Lafayette, Louisiana. But if they push and he signs early, Texas would be that team right now, although Baylor continues to have the commitment. Again, Texas, I think, to your point and my point about doing even these discussions, it's possible Texas goes 5 for 5 because they have so much momentum right now. Right. And that's part of this play. All right, let's go on to the two transfer portal guys that are here. Start with Andrew Mukuba, because I know you followed his recruitment heavily when he was at Austin LBJ and know him. Tell people what's going on with the Clemson nickelback.
Yeah, I know Mukuba spent a lot of time today with former head coach at Austin LBJ, Jamal Finner, on campus when he arrived. The two of them obviously having coached and played for one another back in the day, seemingly a perfect fit. On top of that, Jahdae Barron, almost an unsung hero in this recruitment as well, the minute he got onto campus for his visit. The two of them trained with the same Austin area trainer, Bernard Blake. I mean, Bam is one of the guys who has developed a ton of Texas guys, Michael Taffy, Jahdae Barron, some of these guys that we've really seen take steps in their development since arriving on the 40 acres. A lot of that can be attributed to Bam. And so very encouraging. Drew is one of his, youngest guys that he's had forever. And, the two go way back. So it's good to see the two of them hanging out, really getting the sense of what it's like to be on campus in Austin and living the life of a Texas football player in the city.
You feel good about Texas's position here?
I do. I think the minute he got to Austin, it was kind of to campus because he's from Austin. That's one of those weird deals. But no, I do feel good. Texas is the team to beat there.
Okay, gotcha. What about Matthew Golden, the wide receiver kick returner out of Houston? He was. We thought he was coming in on Thursday, but then he delayed it till Friday for his parents to come along with him. What have you heard there?
Yeah, again, similar to Mukuba. There is a need at receiver for next year, and you can pitch that right away. You've seen what Texas has been able to do with Xavier Worthy and AD Mitchell. The pitch has been flawless. Come in, compete, really step into a role, avoid right away, and that's going to be a fortuitous spot for you and the Texas Longhorns moving into the SEC. It's really given Golden very little to think about, in my opinion. I think the decision I think it's there for the taking. I think
this is what's happening, CJ. The reality of it is Texas is knocking it out of the park right now. I mean,
100%.
You haven't been around for when you weren't necessarily around when Mac Brown just would domino, right? Steve Sarkisian's done a great job in late seasons grabbing guys like Kelvin Banks, Neto Miozulu, DJ Campbell. That class was all late, right? You know what I mean?
Right.
Then you have guys like last year that they picked up late. You look at it, or flipping an Anthony Hill.
Hill, yeah.
Yeah, those guys. Steve Sarkisian has a little bit of a verve for recruiting, I think, is what the reality of it is. And that's what they're trying to put together today on campus. We're taping this around 7 o'clock on Saturday night. I don't put in crystal balls, but I would be surprised if Texas doesn't land at least 3 of these 5.
Yes.
I do think that 5 of 5 is a possibility. So
I do too.
Just to give people a realistic sense. You feel that way?
Yeah, no, I think 5 for 5 is on the table, like you mentioned. I'll go so far to even say I think 4 could be the floor amongst the group that we just mentioned. And Bobby, I wanted to mention it because you mentioned how the recruiting spurts that we've seen kind of come like a flashbang. They just come one after another. And I think going back off of what we've seen from Sarkisian and his staff, that's kind of the preferable way. When you look back at the past 2 summers, when has Texas really built up the majority of its class? It's when, you get a big recruitment early and then the dominoes just start to fall 2 summers in a row, right around the time, right around the turn of the calendar to July. Texas's class really, really, really builds up. And I think that's encouraging. We'll see that again.
Yeah. And last year, a year ago, it was Arch Manning Palooza. It was, that's what it is.
That was the big one.
Right. Yeah, that has been big. All right, we'll dip out now. I think that's going to be a good update for Saturday night, just to try to quick and dirty give people what we know as of right now. We'll be back tomorrow when these players start having their exit interviews, so to speak, with Steve Sarkisian. Those are all set up for Sunday morning. Of course, the Longhorns also on the practice field today as well, I believe. Look, it is that time of year. We're 5 days away now from National Signing Day. Longhorns with 21 verbal commitments. A couple more of these, both Filsaime and Tyanthony Smith, midterm enrollees. There could be as many as 17 midterm enrollees joining the Longhorns in January. As CJ says, that's just a lot. All right, for CJ Vogel, I'm Bobby Burton. That's been this episode of On Texas Football. Hook 'em.